Welcome to the Cunningham Piano Show podcast, where we explore the world of pianos and the people behind them. I'm your host, Hugh Sung, and in today's episode, I have two members of the Radam Schwartz Quartet, jazz quartet, that are going to be coming to Cunningham Piano's Cherry Hill Showroom on Sunday, April 28th at 3 o'clock as part of our ongoing Jazz and Blues Showcase series. Please welcome Radam Schwartz and Ghee. Gentlemen, thank you so much for your time. Yeah, for being on the show. So
very welcome. Thanks for having us.
Hope you don't mind. I'm going to read a little bit of your bios here and just kind of give a sense of how amazing you guys are as jazz musicians. So let's start with you, Radam. You are a B3 or a Hammond B3 organist and jazz pianist, and you've built your reputation over the last 35 years playing with some amazing jazz musicians. In fact, one of your recordings is actually mentioned in the B3, I guess the Hammond B3 Bible, as one of the essential organ recordings of all time. It's an album appropriately named Organized. I love that name. Very, very clever. And you also have the distinction of running one of the longest running weekly jazz sessions in New Jersey. This is something you started a jam session at the Peppermint Lounge in Orange, New Jersey, from 1986 to 2016, and then in 1997, when I guess you guys moved to another location, and then you played every Tuesday for 19 years. That's incredible.
Yeah, that was Crossroads. Crossroads.
Very cool. Now you're a regular at Showman's in Harlem, New York, one of the few remaining organ clubs. So we're going to talk a little bit more about that. And you've also been very active as an educator. You've mentored several generations of young musicians. You've served as the music director at the Jazz Institute of New Jersey for close to 20 years. You also served as artist in residence at Middlesex County Arts High School. You taught at the Jazz Academy in Red Bank, New Jersey, Jazz Connections in Montclair, New Jersey, Jazz Kids House, and you're the director of the Rutgers Newark Mosaic Jazz Ensemble. What an incredible resume you have here. Let's jump over to Gene, incredible sax player here. Give me a second. Let me see if I can pull up your bio here. Thanks for sending this over, by the way. Okay, so you also, Gene, you're also very active as an educator. You're a retired music and band teacher with the New York City Department of Education. You've conducted bands, choruses, vocals, and jazz ensembles. And you're also, you're known as a phenomenal multi-instrumentalist. You play not only the sax, but also the flute and clarinet. I want to jump over to the other bio I had here, because you've played with some amazing, amazing musicians. You've played with the likes of, give me a second, turn the page here. You've played with Art Blakey. You played with Stevie Wonder. You've been the recipient of the Daily News Music Teacher Recognition Award. Really incredible, incredible accomplishments. So I thought, if you don't mind, we're going to dive a little bit more into each of your histories, but and of course your relationship with each other. But before we do that, I wanted to play a little bit of a video clip of Radam. This is a different group that you have, but another ensemble, just to showcase some of your amazing Hammond B3 organ chops. So let's take a listen to it. Maybe we talk more about it, okay? Oh my goodness! It feels like my computer's on fire. That was amazing, really amazing. Radam,
Thank
where
you.
was that performance?
That was sometime about 2 or 3 months ago, at a place in Newark called Clements Place.
Mm-hmm.
That's a band that I've worked with. I recorded a record called Two Sides of the Organ Combo about 6 or 7 years ago, and I had two different groups. The first side was called the Smooth Side, and that was my Smooth Side band. And then I had the Groove Side band, which was basically playing more funk oriented organ music. So that was a record that I did a while ago.
Wow, just
And
amazing.
so we work from time to time in that group.
That's fantastic. And I want to talk a little bit about some of the organ techniques, just kind of, being, I play kind of the traditional organ, and believe it or not, I think I had a Hammond B3 or a Hammond type organ when I was a kid. My dad got an old one, and it's the one where you had to hit the one switch to turn it on, and the other switch after it engaged power.
That's the starter. That's the starter or the run switch, and then the on switch. Yes, it's like a Model T, a Model T Ford car.
Yeah. So was that a Hammond
generator going?
Yeah.
You get the generator going, and then you turn it on.
Yeah. So I remember that little sequence. I had to always hit that first switch, and then wait for it to kind of rev up, and then the second switch would kind of lock it on. And I didn't appreciate it. I wish I appreciated it more, but it was wild. So I want to dive more into the organ stuff, but Gene, let's talk a little bit about you. You are a phenomenal sax player. I wish we had a video to showcase your playing, but I know you and Radam have quite a relationship together as members of this quartet that'll be coming up at Cunningham Cherry Hill on Sunday, April 28th. Tell us a little bit about your relationship with Radam.
Well, my relationship with Radam goes back many, many years ago. Actually, we met, but I really didn't. I was trying to find an organ player a long time ago for a benefit for a friend of mine who passed.
Hmm.
It was at LC's, and I couldn't find the organ player because the organ player that was supposed to do the benefit, he had another gig and he didn't let me know. So I was searching around. I wound up with 7 organ players.
Oh, wow.
Radam said he was there that night.
I was
It was
there
a
that night.
phenomenal night. Huh?
I was
You
there
were
that
there,
night.
right? Yeah, yeah. Well, we really didn't meet. I
No,
met
we
him,
didn't.
yeah, at the Peppermint Lounge.
Yeah.
So the Peppermint Lounge has been, we worked there many nights. I played there with other organ players, but that's how we really got connected musically, the Peppermint Lounge.
Wow. And where is the Peppermint Lounge located? Is this in New Jersey?
It's not there anymore. It's
Hmm.
on Central Avenue in Orange, New Jersey,
I
near
see.
Central Park.
Oh, but it's not there anymore at this point?
No.
Oh, that's a
Actually, the drummer that used to play there, he lives in that apartment complex where the Peppermint used to be.
Oh, wow. Wow.
Don
Yeah,
Williams.
John Williams. Yeah.
And that's the drummer that'll be joining the quartet at this concert?
No,
No.
the drummer is actually Byron Landrum.
Okay.
He's from Philadelphia. I worked with him for. I've worked with him for when I was doing the gig at LC's in Philadelphia every Wednesday with Bootsy Barnes. Byron was the main drummer, although at that time he was working with both Joey DeFrancesco and Betty Carter. So he was on the road a lot, but we worked many weeks together with Bootsy Barnes in Philly, and other situations too. He's a great drummer.
Fantastic. So, Rad, maybe you can fill us in. So it's you on B3 organ, Gene on sax, I'm assuming, right?
Tenor sax, yeah.
Okay. And then tenor sax. Who are the other two members that'll be joining the
Well,
quartet?
Byron Landrum, the drummer, and this young guitarist whose name is Elon Eisenweig
Hmm.
is going to be playing guitar.
Now, have you played together as a quartet? Sounds like, I mean, in the jazz world, you're used to kind of going to different places, meeting whoever's there, and just getting right into the music. And
Right.
is that how this kind of works, or do you need to spend a lot of time rehearsing in preparation for these kinds of gigs?
Uh, well, I don't know if we're going to rehearse as a whole group together beforehand, but I know everyone in the group, and especially the promoter Russell wants us to play a lot of blues orientated
Hmm.
pieces. So we're gonna play some stuff because Gene worked with. You didn't say it on your intro, but Gene worked with Jack McDuff. Another place that Gene and I played a lot together was at La Famille in New York, in Harlem, New York. And when we were there, it was frequent that Jack McDuff would come by, and in fact, he'd sit in the front sometimes and heckle us. So he'd say, like he one time he was there. I mean, I don't know why he said it, but he kept saying to us, "Can you play this tune called Ra Ra Ree?" And and I said, "What? I never heard that tune." He said, "Yeah, it's called Ra Ra Ree. Kick him in the knee." you know, and I actually wrote a tune after that called Ra Ra Ree.
That's
But
hilarious.
anyhow, but Gene was on the road with Jack McDuff. So they knew each other, and sometimes Jack and I would play organ at the same time. I jump off, he'd play, and then the crowd would go crazy. You know what I mean with that, and so that was so we're gonna play some Jack McDuff tunes, and we're gonna play. We're gonna figure out some stuff to play that we all know.
That's so cool. So I've got maybe a question for both of you. I'm a classical pianist. I have jazz envy. I wish I could do what you guys do. So it looks so effortless, but I know it's the result of years and years of understanding the theory and the harmony and just, I mean, thinking of music almost in four dimensions, right? It's an incredible art and skill that looks easy, but again, the result of years of mastery. One of the questions I have, and that's why I was asking about this rehearsal question, because jazz musicians, you guys have the sixth sense of knowing how to hear each other, catch each other, do things, and play off of each other in ways that I just find absolutely mesmerizing. For us for me as a classical pianist, we have all the notes written out, and we're terrified of going off the score and making up our own stuff. Where that is what you do for bread and butter. So one of the questions I have for both of you is, when you're in an ensemble, okay, again, forgive me, I'm a total jazz novice, but when you're in a group, it seems like one of the formulas I hear is you all play the tune, right? And then you go off and each of you take some turns in terms of soloing or doing your own version of the tune or a section of the tune. How do you coordinate who does what when? In other words, is there a leader that just kind of looks around and says, your turn, you go ahead and solo? Or do you guys just prearrange this ahead of time, or do you just do it on the fly?
Good, Radam.
Well, I just would like to first say about what you just said. Classical music was not always, European classical music was not always written was not always about just written on the page notes. It sort of became that, maybe in the 20th century. But I mean, everybody, the history of Chopin, for example, was that he improvised everything, never played anything the same twice. Mm-hmm. And somehow or another, it got written on paper, by either him or somebody else. And now it's
sacred.
Now it's considered almost like a sacrosanct if you don't play the notes that were there, although Chopin never did it like that, let's say.
Yeah.
And Mozart was known as a great improviser.
Beethoven was a terrific improviser too, yeah.
Mm-hmm. What we deal with is we're dealing with American music, African-American music that have become American music, right? And we're dealing with a set of vocabulary that we continually investigate and try to make it into our own concepts, our individual concepts. We develop some individual unique skills, hopefully. That's how we get our own voices. But it's based on a set of vocabulary that's unique to this country. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Jazz is not European music. It doesn't sound like European music. Neither does country and western music or any American zydeco music, blues, rock and roll. It all has an American flavor, and the thing is, it has a set of vocabulary. That's the flavor is the vocabulary we use, the rhythmic vocabulary, the harmonic vocabulary, and the melodic vocabulary. Mm-hmm. So we become ingrained in that, and then, but we do have format. Now, people may not realize that, but like before the gig, we're going to say, okay, on this tune, we do this and we do that. After the solo, we have this interlude that comes between the solos. We talk it out. So, and hopefully that there is some form to it. Mm-hmm. So, so it's not, and even I think that's also a misnomer that people had, at least some writers had about this jazz, like going back to Louis Armstrong. They thought there was no form, that there was no, they just, that's not true either. Back then there were certain pieces that, like Molten Swing, for example, that's a piece that a lot of other pieces were written over, and so they played over the form of that tune, so we have different forms, and we have different types of things, and we talk it over, or we just know it. Wow. Through years of playing.
Let me add to what Radam just said. Another important aspect of the music is listening. Listening is very important, because you just can't play some preconceived ideas, because the organist or piano player might play something and jar something in your head and you listen to it and react to that, or the drummer might play a certain rhythm and you react to that rhythm. That's what's so exciting about jazz,
Mm.
because it's very spontaneous. I mean, you practice different things and everything. When you get in that bandstand, you play for the moment. You hear things, you play according to the chord progressions. Sometimes you go outside the chord progressions, but it's beautiful because it has a lot of freedom, but controlled freedom,
Mm.
not altogether freedom. You know, someone to add.
Gene, I was gonna ask you because as a sax player, as a tenor sax player, you have a single line, right? But you
Right.
have to also understand what we call the harmony, the chords, the multiple notes underneath every moment that you're playing to determine where you're going to go next and what notes you're going to use within that certain key. Was there any
Mhm.
kind of harmonic training? Did you need to learn on the piano at all, or how were you able to get that sense of understanding, say, the chords that Radin would play, and if he changes
Mhm.
something, how do you recognize what key that is or what chords to shape your melody over?
Okay. Well, my background, I started out as a singer,
Ah,
and I sang doo wop. Also sang in the church,
hmm,
but the doo wop trained my ears, so you'd have harmony, and your part is in a certain part of that harmony, and if you're not in tune, somebody would say you're off. They
hmm.
wouldn't say sharp and flat. We didn't know that. It's just that you're off, so you can hear the music. And also studied piano. I studied clarinet before I played the saxophone. So all these combinations of things, and I studied theory.
Aha.
Um, Sometimes that helps you with the chords. You learn chord progressions. There's some standard chord progressions, and the purpose of learning a lot of standards is because they have chord progressions that repeat a lot. So you learn one tune, and you look at another tune. You say, "Oh, I recognize that 2-5-1 or this altered chord from this other song." So all these things that prepares you to play. You might play something sometimes where you're not that familiar with the song,
Mm.
so you have to deal with the form of the song and listen to see where it's going. That's why I said listening is extremely important.
Wow. Radam, I'm wondering so if we could talk a little bit about the B3 organ itself.
Sure.
And actually, we were talking a little bit before we started this interview for the show coming up on April 28th at Cunningham Piano's Cherry Hill Showroom. You're not playing the piano. You're actually going to be bringing one of your organs. Do you know which organ
Yes.
you're going to be bringing?
Well, I haven't decided yet, because when I was younger, by the way, I used to move the B3 organ by myself,
That's a big
or
instrument.
or with, and Gene knows because he was on many of the gigs where I recruited him to help me move it, right? And we did some crazy, we moved it into some crazy places, right? But we're a little bit older now,
That
so
makes a difference.
that's like one of my things on a gig. If I have a young cat on the gig, right? I might say to the audience, he's on the gig because he's going to help me move the organ, because the rest of the cats are all gimps,
How
you know,
heavy is a
and
Hammond
that
B3
includes me and Gene.
organ? On average, how heavy is the standard Hammond
Well, the
B3
B3 organ is 370 some odd pounds.
organ? Oof,
And
wow.
then you also got to move the speaker, which is called the Leslie speaker,
Uh-huh, uh-huh.
in. So I endorse Hammond organs, and I also have a hybrid organ, a more portable organ called the Hammond XKX. So
SK.
I may be bringing that down. Uh, you know, I prefer playing the B3, but I might bring that as well. So that's up in the air right now. Which of those organs I'll bring? I actually have two B3 organs. One is in my house, one which was the organ at the club where I was telling you, La Famille. I inherited that organ,
Hmm.
which used to be Jack McDuff's organ.
Wow.
And then I have another organ that I use, to perform on. So we'll see. when we get closer to the date, which organ I'm
Now
going to.
that organ
What?
at Radam's house, I had many experiences with that organ because my first gig with Jack McDuff, we drove from Harlem to Cincinnati, and we had a flat tire. We went through a snowstorm,
Oh,
and then he had a separate carrier for the organ. So as soon as we got to the gig, I didn't know this was part of the gig. I had to help him take that organ out, help him wheel it in the club, and I'm trying to change clothes, and he started playing. That was my
oh no.
first. That was my introduction to Jack McDuff's group.
Oh, wow.
When I was with Arthur Prysock's band, they had the organ in the back of a bus, and I was the thinnest cat at the time in the band, and and maybe the youngest. So I had to crawl underneath the organ in the back and lift it off. They had it on these these metal things. I don't know what you call it, but it kept it in place. I had to lift it off, and then the drummer at that was Don Williams, who we're talking about, and he was very strong at the time. So I would lift it all the way to the edge, and then the road manager, who was Arthur's cousin, would grab it, and Don would grab it and take it out of the bus. So yeah, we have organists. We when I first started playing organ, I was moving into this club called LC's. That's in Newark, and John Patton was there, and he was there. He said he's just calling me all sorts of names, telling me I was a weak, and I won't tell you the rest of the words that he said after that. But he was saying I was a weak blankety 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 blank, and there was a guy there named Richard McCrae. He's about 5'3" and thin, and he said, listen, young bud, I'm going to show you how to move an organ. So he starts moving it. I said, let me help you. I said, I'm going to show you. I didn't say you're going to help, right? And he showed me how to lift the organ out of the van. And the whole concept was never get the whole weight of the organ at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
Always lift one side at a time. So, so that he showed me how to move an organ. And then for years, I would just, I knew how to do it,
Wow. I've seen the piano movers that work with us at Cunningham Piano, and they have a special technique of
Mm-hmm.
using the weight of the piano, kind of, I don't know, counterbalancing it against itself. So they're never, again, like you said, holding the full weight of the piano at once, but always counterbalancing it, one leg off, and then tipping it over, and finding a way to let the piano kind of move itself. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
Similar thing with the.
Yes, definitely. Yeah.
Well, Radam mentioned the weight of the Hammond B3 organ. He mentioned the Leslie speaker, which was heavy, but he didn't mention the pedals. The pedals have these razor sharp metal objects, and if you put your hand, you can get seriously cut.
Those are the leads, the
yes,
electrical leads that go into the organ.
No, they're it's manual.
A manual. Wow.
Sometimes they call them tines.
Oh,
interesting. And then they compress when you put them in. They compress this button, and that's where it becomes electronic.
Interesting. So, question: the portable Hammond that you're maybe thinking of bringing.
Yeah.
This is the SKX model. Is that right?
SKX, yes.
Okay. Does that have its own? First of all, does it have only one or two manuals,
two manuals? Two manuals with drawbars.
Wow, with drawbars. And does it have pedals as well?
Yes.
Wow. One of the things I was noticing in the video that we watched was if you look closely at the beginning and you're playing and the shot with you and the whole band, and I see your foot stomping around. It's not just stomping out the rhythm. You're actually playing the bass line with your foot, right?
Yes.
That's amazing.
There's a lot of different techniques of playing the bass line, but one of the essence of it is that the organ is playing the bass line. It has to hook up with the drummer. That's the first thing that happens. The organ has to has to hook up with the drummer and create a groove. In a piano, bass, and drums situation, the bass player and the drummer have to hook up that groove, and then the piano sort of fits on top of that. But the organ, that's its job, to hook up with the drummer. And so that's the number one thing, and that's the hard thing. That's the hardest thing transferring from a piano player to an organist, is that you have to put 80% of your concentration on that whole hookup with the drums and keeping that bass line going, and everything else. And if you, and one thing, like Red Prysock told me when I was an Arthur Prysock's band, he said, I'm just going to tell you what he said. He said, the problem with you white organists are when your right hand gets happy, your left hand doesn't get happy with it. Right? He said, but all black organists know that when the right hand gets happy, the left hand gets happy. So basically, what he's, the essence of it, and I was told at the beginning, the bass is dropping out every time you play a line. Your bass drops out. So one of the great things about that gig was it wasn't really a gig about me soloing. It was a gig about me laying down the groove. Wow. So I could concentrate on that and just try to get that together, and then just through the years of
very
playing,
important.
Yeah, the groove. One time I did this concert with this organist, named Ernie Jones, and they picked these two. And Ernie was a funny organist. He's a funny guy to start with, and a funny organist. He didn't know a whole lot of tunes, and he played a lot of blues, and he didn't always keep the form, but he had an incredible groove, right? So I played the first set, and it was the same rhythm section. I played the first set. I thought I did pretty good. The crowd seemed to like it, and then Ernie came up, and the minute he started playing, the crowd started screaming because the groove was so fundamentally, in the pocket, and I said, okay, that's organ playing. That's what organ playing is about. That's what you have to get together before you add anything on top of that. And I think gets lost today too, among the young organists, because they play a lot of slick stuff, but they don't think about the groove the same way.
I've got a general question, maybe for both of you gentlemen. I was talking recently with another classical pianist that plays some jazz, and according to her, for her the secret was being extremely precise with the basic rhythm. Whatever the beat is, it's like you set a metronome to that. You have to be the absolute precision. For her was her secret. It's like you can kind of make the melodic stuff flow around it, but you have to keep that groove.
Well,
metronome. Is that correct?
I would say I often have drummers who ask me about that, and I had a student the other day who asked me about that. He was asking about some groove issues, right? I know drummers who are, let's say we say swingings. There's whether a drummer's swinging or not. It's very subjective, but I know a drummer, for example, who had incredible metronomic accuracy and wasn't swinging at all. And I know if you listen to Elvin Jones, he wasn't metronomically accurate, but he was swinging. He was swinging incredible. I think we're talking about two different issues. Not to say you shouldn't have great metronomic accuracy, but it has nothing to do with swinging.
Interesting.
It has to do. Now, what pulls the band together, is that we're reading each other's metronomic accuracy. That's what keeps us together. That's what the hi-hat does. It keeps the metronomic accuracy. But you could be metronomic accurate and not swing at all. And there are many drummers who fall into that category. And there's, back in the day, I knew drummers who have I'm not going to name names, but there's a drummer around here. He's got an incredible groove on his ride cymbal, but he's just not metronomically accurate, But But there's a lot you could learn from these young guys could learn from him about how he swings. But I think it's two different issues.
Interesting.
I think that the person you're talking about, the classical player, just, we come up back in the day, the jazz audience that I was playing for, and you have to realize that the organ scene was predominantly happened in the African American community. In fact, 80% of the jazz venues, black jazz venues, had organ in them. So the organ was really, like a sub genre of jazz in a sense. Although so many people came through that scene, like John Coltrane before he joined Miles was playing with Jimmy Smith in Philadelphia. So the audience demanded that you would be swinging in a certain way. If you weren't swinging, then they couldn't get with it. So and there's lots of ways. It's not one way to swing either, but there is a couple of fundamental things that you have to do to be swinging, and the audience demanded that. And now metronomic accuracy, that's a whole different issue.
Gene, when you're taking a solo, when you're leading the group in certain songs, do you feel like you can move the rhythm along, you can move the groove along in your certain way, or do you just basically, the groove is there and I just ride in that pocket? I mean, how do you relate to the groove?
I can push it. I can push the groove. Yeah, instead of laying back so much. Now, I'm a little older than Radam, and before I started playing, I just want to say that in Newark, where I'm from, I was born, raised in East Orange. It was like an organ town. It
Interesting.
seemed like every bar had an organ, and that's what I thought every bar did. I thought you go to a bar to listen to music. I didn't know that every bar didn't have an organ or didn't have live music. But that's what I came up on. My sister used to babysit me. I used to go hear these various groups with organ players. The first person I sat in with, other than in high school, was an organist. His father had an organ in the club. It was Larry Young. And Larry Young had a style that wasn't like Jimmy Smith or Jimmy McGriff or Jack McDuff. He was more adventurous and played more modern. And sometimes he couldn't work because they were looking for the thing that Jack McDuff would play, or Jimmy Smith, So the organ was extremely popular in Newark, Chicago, Detroit, Philadelphia. Like Radam said, John Coltrane was playing with Jimmy Smith. And Odin Pope, who I worked with, he told me that he took John Coltrane's place because Miles asked him to go with him to play with him. But Train was playing like 6 nights a week, with Jimmy Smith. But the organ is very overpowering also. So he said he was hearing those chords all night long. And this, so he decided to go with Miles. He figured he can get more freedom, and which he did.
And more money.
More money, right.
Gentlemen, I think we could talk all day. It's just such an amazing art form. And both of you, it's such an honor to be speaking with both of you. And
thank you.
Really looking forward to this incredible concert coming to Cunningham Piano, Cherry Hill Showroom on Sunday, April 28th. Maybe I want to close off with 2 questions. Number one, have you made your set list yet? And do we know of any particular songs that you're planning on playing for that show?
Even if we knew it, top secret.
Okay, top secret set list. The last question I want to leave with both of you, and maybe we'll start with you, Radam. Both of you have been passionate educators. Radam, you still teach online, right? And
I teach online. I'm also like you read. I'm teaching at Jazz House Kids, and I teach online, but and I teach I teach privately.
And Gene, are you still teaching now, or have you retired from teaching?
No, I've been teaching for the last few years at Jazzmobile in New York.
Very
That's
cool.
been very beneficial. We're having a concert April 10th with the students and the faculty.
Nice. Both of you, how is the future of jazz looking? I mean, that's, for me, that's a question I have in the classical music world. How does the future of classical music look? And I love to ask my guests about that. Gene, I'm going to start with you. How does the future of jazz look for you and for the next generation?
Well, there are a lot of excellent young musicians coming up.
Mm-hmm.
However, unfortunately, they don't have places to play on a regular basis.
Yeah.
Back in the 50s and before then, you would play 6 nights a week. You play all the time. And that's where you learn how to play.
Yeah.
They come out of school learning, what they learn. They have great technique and whatnot. A lot of times I don't hear the passion or the soul. I guess that takes time. But I feel they need to have more education for young people with jazz, because when I play different places, especially in Harlem, there are a lot of tourists come out and they love the music. The people in the neighborhood, they don't come out to hear the music. But people from all over the world, they come and they pack the place. But they're from all over the world, not from the neighborhood. The
Interesting.
neighborhood, they need to
Appreciate what they have. Yeah.
right. It's right around them. So with the future of jazz, it's hard to say. There are a lot of excellent young players. I hear that, but need more places to play. That's the main thing. You have to play somewhere
Yeah.
and have an audience. Yeah.
Radam, what about you? Where do you see?
Well, just to build off what Gene said,
Yeah.
when people ask that question, or people, I hear a lot of people say generic things in general about any type of subject, right? When you look at jazz history, one thing that is continually not mentioned is how important the audience is to the development of a music. It's not just about the musicians. So, for example, the young musicians who are coming up, they're going to school. They don't know how, they're not built, none of them have a sixth sense about how to read an audience. And none of them are developing an audience. In fact, a student of mine just did a concert over at the New School. And it was like he played with the faculty and some of the students. And he said it was packed. But it was packed with family members, and with students who go to the New School, jazz students. That's not going to build an audience. You know what I mean? Yeah. Because those family members are not coming out to hear me or Gene or any other person. They're just coming out to see their little, kids, their children play, and that's all they're interested in. They're not really interested in so nobody's building an audience for jazz. So if you're not building an audience for jazz, you're not going to have music, because more important than even the musicians is you have to have a supply and demand. You have to have demand for the audience. So, and the young people, I don't know if any of the young musicians are trying to do that at all, amongst their generation, because they're going to be out of work very soon if they're relying on my generation to listen to them. So they go and, want to take advantage of, of certain people, but I don't see a lot of they're even paying any attention, valuing trying to build an audience. So, like I just say, in certain areas, people used to know who I was. If I was playing like I played, and I had steady gigs, like just 10, 15 years ago, I was working twice a week at this club in Newark called Skippers. And it was usually packed, and it's and I could do that, and I did that gig all the time. That was a steady gig that I had. I had the Peppermint Lounge like for 11 years. And then we went to Crossroads for 19 years. That was the longest running jam session. And we wouldn't have been there 19 years if nobody showed up. They weren't going to pay they weren't going to pay the band. if it's empty every night.
Right. Right.
So the bottom line is there's some just very basic things about music and the relationship of musicians to the audience that are, and then, when we talk about groove, how many times nowadays when I'm playing in like a restaurant and they say, "Oh, keep it down, keep it down." You know what I mean? Back in the day, it was like, let's groove hard and have the people clap their hands.
Right.
So there's different dynamics going on. It's too broad a subject to just say one way or the other. Even in general, if live music will even exist, I mean, that's one thing. Whether there'll be live music, whether anybody even cares, about live music. You know what I mean anymore.
Sure.
And that's goes beyond any classification of music. It's just, we perfectly accept, like if somebody is singing at the Super Bowl, that they pre-recorded everything, mixed it, auto-tuned it, and then they're lip syncing it.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Sure.
Like Beyonce, for example, she was hanging upside down at the Super Bowl, swinging upside down and acting like she was singing. Well, let me tell you, I think that's physiologically impossible to be hanging upside down and singing. And I debated with people who love Beyonce. I said, go ahead and hang upside down and put a microphone there and see if you can sing. But if you end up in the hospital, don't blame me.
Gentlemen.
I want to say that the aging,
Yeah.
being that I perform in different cities like Newark, and then go to Philadelphia, Brooklyn, and Harlem, I talk to the people. I say, listen, these people are getting older. I don't see where the younger people are. Now, what happens when these people leave the planet? They transition. Who's going to be the audience? And that's what's been happening. Yeah. Clubs are going to start closing, or they'll open up for a little while and then they'll close. Right. That's why we have to develop younger listeners. Right.
Well, it's certainly my hope that this series that we have at Cunningham Piano, Cherry Hill Showroom, our ongoing jazz and blues showcase series will help to do just that. Grow an audience of folks who appreciate what you guys are doing and in turn are fed by your music. And so we really hope that this podcast, this episode helps to really, bring a wider audience to your show. And I wish you all the very, very best. Thank you so much for taking time to be here.
Thank you, though. Thank you for having us. It's very important that you're having us.
Absolutely.
To promote this music.
And we'll have you back again. Something tells me you're going to be performing at Cunningham Piano, Cherry Hill, many, many more times in the future. At least that's my hope. And I would love to have you guys back on the show, maybe with the other members of your quartet next time, okay?
Okay.
Cool. Thank you.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you, Radam. Gene, thank you so much for being on the show. For the Cunningham Piano Show podcast, I'm Hugh Sung. Thanks so much for watching and listening, and we'll see you all next time.